Oh, yeah.
I'll even put my jacket.
You're darn right.
and my pants. and
Thank
all
you.
over, so I just put them all in my bag.
Debbie, you're good.
Okay, good evening. I'd like to call to order the regular March 10th, 2022 meeting of the Webster Groves Board of Adjustment. Tom, would you please call the roll?
Randy Sprague.
Here.
John Burse,
Here.
Debbie Sahlberg,
Here.
Thomas Walsh, and we're expecting BJ Papella, who's not here at the moment.
So right now we have 4 members. The way that we run these meetings is we'll have the presentation of the case. The city will make their case first. Then the applicant will have an opportunity to address the board. And then anyone who's in opposition or in favor of the application will also have an opportunity to address the board. Then we will close the public session and no longer take public comment. However, and that's when the board, but that's an open part of the meeting, and the board will discuss it and make a vote. The proceedings will be recorded, so we ask you to speak clearly and one at a time. And like I said, we will vote on your application tonight for a decision. Approval will take 4 votes out of the 5. So because right now we appear to only have 4 members, prior to when we close the public portion of the discussion on your item, if you would like to have your item continued until we can have a full board, that is your option. But once we go into executive session, we will vote on it, and you can't back up then. You can't, if it would not have, if you would not get 4 votes, you can't say, oh, wait a minute, I want to continue this. You have to make that decision before we go into executive session. So does anyone have any questions? Tom, would you please read the powers relative to variances?
When by reason of exceptional narrowness, shallowness, or shape of a specific piece of property as of September 20, 1956, or by reason of exceptional topographical conditions or other extraordinary or exceptional situation or condition of a specific piece of property, which condition is not generally prevalent in the neighborhood, the strict application of the area regulations of this zoning code will result in peculiar and exceptional practical difficulties to our exceptional or undue hardship upon the owner of such property. The board is hereby empowered to authorize upon an appeal relating to such property, a variation from such strict application so as to relieve such difficulties or hardships.
Thank you. Would you please read the first case on this evening's docket?
I will. It's docket 2371, a petition submitted by Michael S. Smith and Lauren K. Moran for an application for variance from section 53.078J of the zoning code of the city of Webster Groves. The applicant is requesting a variance of 1.67 feet from the minimum required 6 feet east side yard setback in order to construct a one and a half accessory structure located 4.33 feet from the south side lot line. The property is located at 510 South Gore within the 4A 7,500 square foot residential district.
Thank you. Mr. Bontrager, does the city have a case?
Yes, it does. Our period testify.
Mara, would you please raise your right hand?
Do you want to enter the exhibits first?
Yeah. Do you want to enter the exhibits first?
Yes, and
Okay.
and there are 7 exhibits for this docket number. For the purposes of this hearing, we will admit them into the record.
And
Thank
then, sorry, and there's 2 additional exhibits. The PowerPoint is always listed as an exhibit, and so is the zoning code.
All right, so we will move for the PowerPoint to be entered into the record as well as the city zoning code.
Thank you. Mara, would you please raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Could you please state your name?
Mara Perry?
Are you employed by the city of Webster Groves?
Yes, I am.
In what capacity?
Director of Planning and Development
What are your duties in that position?
to administer and execute zoning regulations.
Through your work with the city, are you familiar with 510 South 4 Avenue?
Yes, I am.
Is that property within city limits?
Yes, it's within the city limits.
What zoning district within the city is it located?
It's in the A4 7,500 square foot residence district.
What's the applicant's request?
The applicant is requesting a variance of 1.67 feet from the minimum required 6-foot south side yard setback in order to construct a 1.5-story detached garage located 4.33 feet from the south side lot line.
And just to clarify, off scripture, but the application says it's from the minimum required 6-foot east side yard?
The application says from the south side yard, and the ad went out, should have gone out as the south side yard.
Understood. We read east side earlier, but it is the south side.
It is the south side.
And what municipal code sections apply to this request?
So there's one municipal code section that applies. This is 53.7078J, which is any detached accessory building with a gross floor area exceeding 672 square feet, or with a building height as defined in section 53.020 of the zoning code exceeding 12 feet, shall comply with the minimum side yard setback requirements of the district as applied to the primary structure.
Can you describe the existing conditions of the property?
Yes, so the property that you see here with the boundary survey is located at 510 South Gore. The house was built in 1914. And as identified, I've now turned the property so that the south is now facing, or is now at the bottom of the drawing. And I've identified the accessory structure setbacks as they relate to that section 53.078. When there is a half story on a garage, which creates that more than 12-foot height regulation, it requires a setback that matches the A4 side yard setback versus the accessory structure setback. So the accessory structure setbacks for this particular property are 6 feet from both the south and north property lines, 5 feet from the eastern property line, which is the rear yard setback, and then 10 feet from the primary structure.
And what is the variance requested? Or could you please explain the variance requested?
So the variance requested is in order to construct this 1.5-story garage. It is requested that it meet only the 4.33 feet from the side property line. There was a number of years back, not from this particular property owner, but from a prior property owner. They received a permit that was issued in 2004. That permit in 2004 did the installation of flat work. As part of that flat work, some footings were put in place for a detached garage. At that time, it appears that that detached garage, we don't have these records on file. We're not required to keep them for more than 5 years, but it shows that the permit that was signed off on did show it as only 3 feet. It did not have any inspections in regards to the footings themselves, or sorry, the foundation themselves. There was a footing inspection, but not a foundation inspection. And that pretty much covers the information in regards to the property and the request. And I'm available for any questions.
I think I asked this at the last meeting, but I just want to make clear in 2004, which is approximately when this, I believe when this permit was issued, the variance for a garage that was less than 672 feet would have been 3 feet. Is that correct? Or would it have been 4? What would it have been?
Oh, a 1.5-story garage still would have
But
been.
no, but I don't know that this was going to be 1.5 story in 2004.
Correct. In 2004, according to the permit, it looks like it was a 1-story garage. From what little information we have, it wasn't intended to be a 1.5. So then if it was only a 1-story, it would have needed to have a 5-foot setback.
5-foot setback. And but there's no indication that a variance was granted in 2004.
We looked, there were no variances requested for this property.
Okay, and the removable sheds that you're showing, metal sheds movable, I can't tell if it's one or two. Those do not meet the criteria for needing to meet the setbacks, is that correct?
They also don't, and we have no permits on file for those.
Okay.
And looking at older photographs, they've been there through a couple owners.
So, I mean, are those sheds big enough that they would require permits?
Yes,
Okay,
they would.
okay. All right, does anyone else have any questions? I'm sorry.
No.
Thank you, Mara.
But the only question we are considering the one variance is for the side yard.
The only variance you're requested to look at
Right.
is for the south side yard setback in regards to the, where the existing footings are currently located on the property.
Okay, so repeat for me again. The previous owner put in the footing for this garage. And they did get a variance at the time?
They did not.
They didn't.
No, so in 2004, according to some of the documentation that we can find, so we do have a record of a permit being issued in 2004. We are not required to keep the documents, so we did not have a copy of the plans
Okay,
and we didn't have a copy of the permit card. We only had a copy of the permit itself that says basically a garage. And it was never closed out. And according to the documentation that the previous owners gave to the current owner, there is an indication that they had one inspection for the footings. They did not have a foundation inspection. It was potentially designed for a single story without the half story. The notes on there indicated that the person who approved it at that time, which was, there's no zoning sign off on the bit of documentation that we see. It looks like it was signed off on by the building inspector.
Oh,
so the issue of, it looks like the intent of that owner was to build a one-story garage. Now the proposal here is now for a story and a half, but that's not an issue. We thought it might be at the last meeting.
Well, it
so-
was, we had to re-advertise because we had advertised the wrong code section. So when you were doing a one-story garage, the setback is only 5 feet from the property line. And the request was going to be a different request. So right now they're having to get a request from a 6-foot setback versus a 5-foot setback. So we had to re-advertise a new code
The one
section.
difference then is 6 feet now.
6 feet because it's going to be over a single story. When it's 1.5 stories, it has to be farther away from the property line.
Right.
It did that Monday night too. I don't know where the sound is coming from. Any other clarifications that I can make?
Okay,
What, if he was saying, I'm going to build a one-story garage,
Yes,
you would still need a
Still
variance.
needs
you'd
a
still
variance.
need a
Still needs a
variance.
Still needs a
Right.
variance.
It would be a
That's
much
a
smaller
lot of
variance.
It'd be a smaller variance, but it would still
Yeah.
require a variance.
Yeah.
Well, no, it would be a,
5 foot something.
Right now it's at 4.33
right, yeah.
and it would only need to go, so 0.67,
Right.
0.67 feet.
And now it's
Now it's 1.67 feet.
1.67.
So I'm sorry, Mara.
That's
We
okay.
cut on the code that you've provided us, we've cut off the section. There is no exception to the 5-foot side yard setback for garages that are smaller than a certain size. Okay, okay.
No.
No.
I'm confusing that with something else. All right. Anyone else have any questions for Mara?
well, and the issue that we encountered last meeting was the square footage of the proposed 2-story.
The half story,
So that's no longer obviously
no, it's now been addressed
taken,
by the
addressed and taken care
by
of.
the proper code section. Correct.
And if I'm correct, I mean, this isn't just a pad. And the photograph clearly shows, they have poured the footings. This is not a pole barn. This is the real deal. And they've poured the things, the bolts are there, they're ready to screw down the garage.
So that is correct. That was done in 2004. Now, the applicant, if they get the variance, still does need to get an engineer
Right.
to look at it. We're not sure if it actually was that the footings were designed for a 1.5 story garage.
Right, I
So,
understand completely.
But
But
yes.
it's more than just a pad. It's-
Yes,
It's
correct.
clearly been
To-
designed to go beyond that.
yes,
Got
yeah,
it.
the previous owner
No, I
did put
agree. I
footings.
understand there's still other issues. Okay,
John, do you have any questions?
I do not.
Okay, thank you, Mara. Is the petitioner here this evening? Would you please come up to the podium?
How y'all doing?
Mr. Smith, correct?
Yes,
Please state your name and raise your right hand.
Michael S. Smith.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you very much. Please go ahead.
As Mara said, I'm requesting a setback of 1.67 feet, or a variance, I apologize, for the setback of 4.33 feet to construct my 1.5 story garage. As Mara noted, there is a foundation there poured in 2004. Appears to be good condition. I have Brucker Structural Engineering Firm standing by, I guess, pending the results of this to determine if I'm able to build the 1.5 story garage on the footings that exist. Even if I'm not able to use said footings, I'm still requesting the variance based on how the driveway is. My wife and I are also looking to add on to the south side of our home, which Mara and I have discussed pretty extensively. And once that addition is placed, if the garage is moved over the almost 2 feet further into my yard, making the turn around the addition is going to be almost impossible to navigate 2 vehicles through. So it'd be a super tight fit. The possibility for damage to the house or vehicles would be pretty significant.
Okay, so could you please put this request in the form of a hardship? So what is, I mean, what's the hardship in this case?
Sorry, the hardship would be access to the garage in the new position if forced to move further into my property. Access in the garage from the current, how my driveway is on my property would be the hardship.
Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Smith?
What's the depth of your lot? Do you know? It should be on here, but maybe I'm looking right at it and don't see it.
I can't add that.
It's 50 feet wide. And
Trying to find it. It's on the, should be on the.
is it
back.
on here? And am I,
128 feet deep according to the real estate record that the city has provided us.
how much?
128.
Yeah.
120, okay.
Yeah, and that's on the back page of. the
Okay, I
boundary
just
survey.
missed it. Okay. Yep.
Unfortunately, due to how narrow the lot is, it kind of limits where everything can kind of be placed.
What's your plan for the sheds?
They would go away.
Go away.
Yeah, and those, as Mara said, they've been there apparently for at least 2 to 3 owners. They look pretty old and dated.
Okay.
Do you have any idea if you had to tear the footing out
Mhm.
and what is there, roughly what your cost would be?
Well, that's really not something that we can consider.
can't.
The board really can't consider cost, Tom.
Okay, no,
So-
I'm not trying to consider the cost. I'm just, it's trying to
12,000 to
show,
15,000
show
is
that
the
it's a
answer.
decent amount of money.
It's 12,000 to 15,000
Which
is what I
would
was
be a-
quoted.
Yeah,
But yeah.
Okay,
as-
I may be out of
as
line
Ms.
on
Selberg
that. I'm
said.
sorry, I apologize.
Well,
Yeah.
that's really not one of the.
No,
board's
I know,
issues to
we're not-
consider.
Theoretically, we can't consider that.
Right, and I'm aware that's, I left it out, but
Theoretically, I mean, we really can't.
sure.
Okay.
I have
So
no
so
more.
you
Okay.
back up to a business or basically yeah, it is a
Correct.
business.
Yeah, it's.
Parking lot of a business.
Oh, actually, it's the parking lot, then the law
Yeah,
office.
yeah,
Then there is the 2-story apartment complex.
right,
My neighbor's lot, and then Digital Strike is at the
right.
corner.
And have you discuss this with your neighbors to your?
Yes,
That's-
I have discussed it with the neighbor affected. She unfortunately rents it from her brother who lives out of state.
Fair enough.
She does not care, but her brother who lives out of state, I haven't
Good
been
luck
able to get
finding
in contact, so.
Okay. I have no other questions.
None here.
John, any
I don't
questions?
have any.
Good. Seems clear.
Okay.
I don't have any.
If none of the board members have any discussion, we'll move to, no, I'm sorry. Is there anyone here in other than Mr. Smith who's here in favor or online who'd like to speak? Is there anyone here who in opposition or who are online who'd like to speak?
No.
Hearing none and seeing none, we'll close the public session and move.
This is where he has to pull out. if it's
Move
board
to
or not.
board discussion. So do you want us to go ahead with the executive session?
Yeah,
Okay,
yes,
okay, you
please.
can have a seat now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Anyone want to start the discussion off?
I would consider starting it off with a motion.
Okay, that's right. Would you like to make a motion?
I would motion that we grant the request of a variance of 1.67 feet from the minimum 6-foot requirement for a 1.5-story garage.
For docket 2371?
That's correct.
Do we have a second? This, we can move discussion on after we.
I'll second that
Okay.
motion, yes.
Okay. Does anyone have any comments?
Yeah, I think the dynamic of where the driveway is placed, the existing permitted footings having already pre-existed, along with the potential of expanding their home on a fairly compact lot, merits consideration as a hardship in this case.
Randy?
I think the narrowness of the lot, I think is impressive. And I walk by your house every day. And it is extremely narrow. And I get that. And so there is a minimal amount of green space that's available to you. And to me, I consider that with a family to be something of a hardship. I also did look, and it looks to me to be a very well-structured, I see how they lined everything up. It makes sense where they put this. Whether they had permission to do it or not is another story. But I do understand it, and I get the way that the flow goes. I also have a house in which we built sideways, and it is exceptionally difficult to get around my house. And it's been hit twice by neighbors and friends. So I do have a bit of a feel for that, and I think that's something of a hardship, including my wife. But I truly think the hardship here is the shape, the narrowness of this lot, which precludes a whole lot of ability to do many things. And I think partially because you face back to a commercial property, I think the impact is minimal.
Nicely
Well,
stated.
what I'm wrestling with is this. I think that most of these 50-foot frontage lots can go up to about 150 feet deep. Correct me if I'm wrong, but so that would make this a little smaller 50-foot frontage lot. So what I'm wrestling with just has to do with the gentleman bought the house and the footings were already there. So when he bought the lot, he sort of bought a handicapping condition that wasn't created by the property per se, but by the previous owner.
Sure.
And we're supposed to really look at the property.
Well,
And I see it as a smaller lot. And I see that this somehow got done with the city's knowledge at some point. And so I sort of see all that as a really exceptional circumstance to a lot that's probably, that I believe is substandard
Well, you.
by way of size.
I pulled my phone out because I
Cool.
can't do any math in my head, and it does appear that 6,400 square feet rather than the 7,500 square feet
Yeah.
is the minimum
So I'm
requirement
right.
in
Good.
the R4.
Okay.
So, okay. Does anyone else have any?
So we do have a lot that
That's.
it'd be
that sets-
permitted to be a little bigger if there, had been
Yeah,
space way
right,
back.
right.
It is a substandard lot.
It is
It
a
is.
substandard lot, and
Exactly.
a little additional depth would mean that maybe the maneuvering around the house would be simpler in the event. Okay,
And just to make sure we're all on the same page here, because there's a couple words that have been thrown around. So when we're talking about an area variance, a non-use variance like this, the standard is that there must be, the burden to be met is that they've shown practical difficulties based on. the code. So there's other variances where unnecessary hardship applies. This one is practical difficulty. So we need to be
Practical.
Presenting evidence to show that the way the code is written as it applies to their property creates practical difficulties.
I think we're there.
Thanks for clarifying that. It gets, yeah.
That's what I'm looking for.
all right. All in favor of docket, we have a motion on the floor for approval of docket 2371 as advertised. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the same sign. Tom, would you please poll the commission?
I will. Randy Sprague,
I vote aye.
John Burse,
Aye.
Deb Salzberg,
Aye.
and Tom Walsh votes aye.
Thank you. Your request has been approved. Please see staff members during regular business hours for your next steps. Thank you. Tom, would you please read the
And I
next
vote-
docket item 2372 into the record?
Okay, is this,
Here, 2372.
so it is 2372, which is 353 South Gore. Okay.
Also on board.
And
Also on
the
South
reason
Board.
I hesitate is that I had a different docket number on what I'm reading from. So what the docket number is officially
Yeah, so you're right. On the
Yeah.
agenda, it says
on the agenda, it says in,
2331. So
I
is this,
apologize.
was this the one that was granted previously? Okay.
Yeah. So
Okay.
it's 2372.
so it's docket item 2372, a petition submitted by Jim and Dina Stoffler for an application for variance from section 53.053 C.2 of the zoning code of the city of Webster Groves. The applicant is requesting a variance of 3.3 feet from the minimum required 8.4 foot north side yard setback in order to construct a two-story addition and raised deck located 5.1 feet from the north side lot line. The property is located at 353 South Gore Avenue within the A2 15,000 square foot residential district.
Thank you. Does the city have a case?
Yes. We call Mara Perry to testify.
And you want to introduce the exhibits first?
Yes, so we moved to enter in 1 through 7 in this case, and then additionally the PowerPoint and the city code as 2 more exhibits.
Thank you. Please go ahead.
Could you please state your name?
Mara Perry?
Are you employed by the city of Webster Groves?
Yes.
In what capacity?
Director of Planning and Development
What are your duties in that position?
to administer and execute zoning regulations.
Through your work with the city, are you familiar with 353 South Gore Avenue?
Yes.
Is that property within the city limits?
Yes, it is.
And in what zoning district in the city is that located?
It is in the A2 15,000 square foot residence district.
What is the applicant's request?
The applicant is requesting a variance of 3.3 feet from the required 8.4 foot north side yard setback in order to construct a two-story addition located 5.1 feet from the north side lot line.
Code sections apply in that request?
So the code section is 53.053 C2. C is for side yard setbacks. The minimum side yard setback shall be established in the following manner. Item 2, residential structures existing as of September 20, 1956, which are closer to the side property line than 10 feet, may be enlarged provided any addition is no closer to the side property line than 12% of the lot width at the front yard setback.
Can you describe the existing conditions of the property?
Yes. So the existing conditions, the existing house or the main structure of the house was built in 1920. If you see on the PowerPoint, that 1920 section is the area in yellow. And then it is a legal non-conforming lot. You will probably notice that it does vary actually from the front of the lot to the rear of the lot. The lot width actually changes and it slopes ever so slightly. So it is a legal non-conforming lot. And that legal non-conforming lot with the house that was built in 1920 has a existing one-story addition off the back of the house that I've identified in yellow that was built 5.1 feet from the north side lot line with a variance in 2001. The variance in 2001 was a variance from that code section also for the reduction of the 8.4 foot side yard setback, which is 12% of the lot. And then it was asked to be 5.1 feet from the north side lot line. I'm going to continue to talk a little bit more about the existing house and then go a little bit more into the variance. So according to the county records, the existing residence was built in 1920. The lot width in A2 requires a minimum average lot width of 80 feet throughout as an average, and then an 80-foot lot width at the front yard setback. This one has an average lot width of about 70 feet. And again, it varies from front to back. And then under today's new regulations, it would require the house to be set back a minimum of 10 feet from the side lot lines, not the 8.4. And the chimney of the structure was built approximately 3.8 feet from the north side lot line. The existing corner of the house, front corner of the house, was located 1.5 feet from the north side lot line.
Can you explain the variances requested?
Yes. So the variance requested, the house is shown in the applicant's exhibit in blue. And the request is for the addition that was on the rear that was approved in 2001 to be demolished and a 2-foot addition, a 2-story addition to be put in its place, expanding off of both the existing house, the footprint of where the 1-story addition was approved previously, as well as then putting a deck, a raised deck area off of the back of the house. The red line that you see there is the request of the 5.1 feet. The green line is the reduced 8.4 foot side yard setback, which is the 12% of the lot. This is zooming in even more into the applicant's drawings of the roof plan. And so you can see the section, this is the raised deck off the back. This is the 2-story addition portion that's on top of the previously varianced 1-story addition. And then there is additional roof line being connected to the back of the house for that 2nd-story addition. Again, this is from the applicant's exhibits. There are elevations showing the red line. This is the rear proposed with the addition and the deck. The red line is where they are requesting the setback. The green is where the setback would be required. We also marked this off on the front elevations, even though it isn't an impact to the front elevation. Do know for some of you that have been on the Board of Adjustment the last couple of years, they also came in and requested in 2020 a setback variance for rebuilding the front porch. So they already have a variance to rebuild this front porch, also matching the 5.1 versus the 8.4. and I'm available for any questions.
So the house sits in the, it's too close to this lot line right now. Repeat what you said about the front porch has been approved.
So there have been two previous variances on this site. In 2001, the applicants asked for a variance to build a one-story addition off the back of the house. In 2020, they asked for a variance to rebuild the front porch on the front of the house.
Right.
And now they are back again to do a two-story addition off the back of the house.
But the rebuilding of the front porch was in the same place as the previous front porch.
Correct.
But they still needed a variant to fix the front, do it.
They
redo-
did. Once you tear it down, you are no longer allowed to
Right.
build it back. Correct.
And this, the new addition is going to be no closer to the side property line than the existing house is at this point in time with what's been varied and what's been added on. They're just going with a second story. Well, they're removing something and building a new first and second story.
Building a new first and second story and expanding back further into the yard,
They're not encroaching further, in other words. on-
not encroaching any further.
Mara, if I may clarify, there is an existing variance, right?
There is an existing variance, but it very specifically was for a one-story addition, which is why we, when reviewing this to go to Architecture Review Board, we looked specifically at that variance and we felt it did not cover the expansive amount of a two-story addition that also had this deck on the back.
It does mean though that there's been a previous finding of practical difficulties.
There was a previous finding, that is correct.
Anyone else have any questions for Ms. Perry? Before we have a start, oh, okay, thank you very much. Is the petitioner here this evening? Would you please state your name and then raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give us the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you very much. Please go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for hearing us tonight. There's a couple of quick things I wanted to share and then clarify and then share a couple of thoughts and then answer any questions. The first thing I'd like to share is an exhibit type S-A here that Mara helped me to tag before the meeting. It's from the adjacent neighbor to the north, I guess, 345 South Board.
Oh, yeah.
In support of the variance drivers. They've been running established for support of the variance. And then the other thing I wanted to clarify, Mara stated that we are intending to tear down that one-story addition in the back. Our intent is actually to build on top.
Yeah, that's what I
Okay.
thought.
Sorry.
I don't know if it makes a difference. In how you view it.
Okay.
If you're
It's gonna-
to build on top of that existing footprint.
It's going to cost a lot less.
Yes, it's certainly more practical.
Well, in 2001 doesn't seem like it should need to be torn down, but that wasn't my decision. Okay.
Right. So, with those two things kind of clarified, we just wanted to share the thought. The idea is to maintain that south edge of the existing house is building right through 20 all along.
Yeah.
And here to that. The couple thoughts that we have just to speak a bit to hardship and peculiarity. And I think it's evidenced by different times that you need to come back, even just to alter the front porch.
Right.
Property needs the variance. And just that, you can see the red and green line, they affect anything that we would want to alter on that.
Sure.
on that side. So I think that's obviously an overarching thing. Anytime modify or deal with the property on that side of the house. The other thing that we wanted to point out is the accessory addition, isn't impacting.
Just so it doesn't sit right in March.
More of it, obviously, but it's not going higher.
Randy, this goes back.
It's not excluding further pipeline. And then obviously, the use of the current redevelopment, the farm condition of the property. I'm curious the history of the property, if that's what the property line was back then, if it was that close or something like that. Probably doesn't matter. They were there, so. So I guess at that, you open any questions and hope.
Anyone have any questions?
I do not. You've been very clear. I
No, I think so.
appreciate that.
It just from an aesthetic point of view, which is not my job and that's somebody else's, but that part of the building is way back. I mean, you're basically looking at a yard rather than a house here. I mean,
Correct.
in terms of what I mean, the view from there, in terms of your neighbors is fundamentally looking at a backyard.
Correct.
Yeah, because as you point out, I think correctly, the two-story house looks right at theirs.
Right.
This is pretty far back from all of that.
Yes, it's close to those, well, the neighbor's a little bit further away from the property line.
Yeah. Yeah, they have some.
As close as they are, it's good to hear from.
And while I'm not suggesting that's a consideration, but it is interesting to me that I take your point that this is really something more toward the back of further behind their property, their house. I should put it. Okay,
Debbie, just a point of order, we've had an exhibit that's been presented, just make sure it's on the record.
Okay, yes, we're.
Right.
So the letter that we reviewed is part of the
Yes.
cityscapes. Thank you. Part of the exhibits. Thank you very much. Does anyone have any other questions for the
No.
petitioner? Okay. Is there anyone in the audience or online who'd like to speak in favor of docket 2372?
There's no one.
Is there anyone in the audience or online who'd like to speak in opposition to docket 2372?
There is no one.
Thank you very much. Seeing none and hearing none. Do you want to go ahead with the discussion with the board decision on this item with 4 members?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you very much. We will then close the public session and move to board discussion. As we did with the last one, could we have a motion for docket 2372 and then we'll start board discussion?
I would move approval of docket 2372.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Does anyone want to have any discussion on, any specific discussion on 2372? I think that what we have is we have a substandard lot that narrows as we move backwards. We have an existing placement of the house. And I believe that that this is a hardship for that the actual location of the house on the lot is a hardship in this particular case.
And I would add, there's been previous, as has been pointed out, practical difficulties, i.e. with the front porch.
Previous and the addition in 2001.
Yes, right. So that there's already been variances granted some years ago.
Any other board comments?
I agree with the comments.
We have a motion and a second for approval of docket 2372. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Tom, would you please poll the commission?
I will. Randy Sprague,
Aye.
John Burse,
Aye.
Debbie Sahlberg,
Aye.
and Thomas Walls votes aye.
Your application has been approved. Please see city staff during regular business hours for your next steps. Thank you very much.
I have to say, I walked by your house also, and I didn't know you had a pool.
Way back there.
Well, it's certainly a pretty house. from the
It is
street.
very pretty.
Is there any more business before the board this evening, Laura?
No other business before the board.
Our next meeting is April, and I don't have the calendar in front of me. The
Hold on.
second Thursday in April,
Yep. Should be April 14th.
April 14th. And hopefully we'll continue to meet in person as much as possible.
Hope so.
Do I have a motion to adjourn? If there's no other business before the board, do we have a motion?
I
to
move to adjourn.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.